This is BBC News. I'm Karin Giannone. Welcome to our special coverage of events in the Middle East. Israel's military says it's engaged in intense fighting with Hezbollah after its troops crossed the border into southern Lebanon overnight. The Israel Defense Forces launched what they called a limited, localized and targeted ground operation against Hezbollah. This map shows the border with southern Lebanon marked in red. An IDF social media post described the raids as based on precise intelligence against Hezbollah terrorist targets and infrastructure in southern Lebanon. It said the targets were located in villages close to the border and posed a threat to communities in northern Israel. Meanwhile, Hezbollah said it was targeting Israeli troops with artillery fire at the border town of Metula. The IDF has declared Metula a closed military area, meaning all entry is prohibited. The US Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin has given his support to Israel's objectives after speaking to his counterpart, the Israeli Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. You can see him there meeting troops on the border. The Israeli military said it carried out precise strikes on weapons manufacturing sites and infrastructure belonging to Hezbollah in the Taha district of Beirut. Mr. Austin also warned Iran it faced grave consequences if it carried out a direct attack against Israel in support of Hezbollah. Let's just show you the scene across the city, Beirut, the Lebanese capital. Explosions have continued overnight in the southern suburbs. There's been smoke rising even now in parts of the city. Israel had ordered the evacuation of 3 of those areas. These pictures show the explosions and smoke rising near Beirut's international airport. There have also been reports of an airstrike hitting a crowded Palestinian refugee camp near the southern Lebanese city of Sidon. Syrian state media say that 3 people have been killed by Israeli strikes on the Syrian capital, Damascus. Israel is yet to comment on those reports. Meanwhile, the UK government has chartered a flight to help British nationals leave Lebanon, scheduled to leave Beirut on Wednesday. In a moment, we'll hear from my colleague Anna Foster, who's in Beirut. But first, our Middle East correspondent Lucy Williamson sends this update from northern Israel.
We've been hearing helicopters overhead for a while now, and also the sound of artillery some distance away. A little while earlier, there were a series of loud explosions that we heard here close to the border as Israel confirmed that it had launched what it's calling limited and targeted ground raids into Lebanon on what it called Hezbollah terrorist targets in the area. It's not clear at this stage what sort of scale or form those raids are taking, but we have witnessed a build-up of troops and tanks here at the border over the last few days. We saw a couple of dozen tanks by the main road here just earlier today. Israel's been inflicting blow after blow on Hezbollah for the past couple of weeks, but any kind of ground invasion represents a new phase in this war, new risks for the Israeli military and new risks for the region as well.
The momentum really gathered here over the few hours leading up to the announcement that Israeli troops had entered Lebanon for the first time since the war in 2006 between these two sides. And it's really the culmination of what has been a very fast-moving Israeli operation over the last week or so. We've seen airstrikes here in southern Lebanon, in the east of the country as well, where Israel said it was targeting Hezbollah's military infrastructure, its weaponry, really trying to degrade the group. And also here in Beirut, as we've seen, very successfully removing and killing many of its senior members, including its leader Hassan Nasrallah. Now, we heard from the IDF that that was going to be a precursor to a ground operation. That has happened really quite quickly, just in a matter of days since it was first suggested by the IDF. I think there are questions now that we will wait and see the answers to. What does a localized and targeted Israeli ground operation in Lebanon look like? What kind of challenges will they face? What does that mean for Lebanese civilians who are still in that area? And I think crucially, what response could it provoke, both from Hezbollah but also from their fellow Iranian-backed proxies here in the Middle East?
Anna Foster in Beirut. Just a line coming in on one of the agencies, AFP. The Israel Defense Forces say there is intense fighting going on in southern Lebanon. Let's get some more analysis of the very latest with the BBC Arabic's Mohamed Taha, who's with me in the studio. Mohamed, what you're hearing from Arabic sources would agree with what we're hearing from that agency, that the fighting is already intense in the south.
The sources about this news are coming from Israeli sources. It's an IDF statement saying there is intense fighting in southern Lebanon at the moment. What we hear from Arabic sources that Hezbollah is shelling some Israeli settlement in northern Israel, like Avivim and also like Al-Mutalla in northern Israel. We got also from Arabic sources that the Houthis in Yemen launched some drone attacks on Eilat, on Israel. We heard also that the Israeli army are asking the people who are living northern the river not to drive any cars into the southern river of the river, which is practically a partial curfew actually in these 30 kilometers southern the river of Litani. So we can see now some movement and fighting in southern Lebanon as a consequence of that land incursion, Israeli incursion in these villages that are on the borders with Israel.
So even though Israel has described this operation as a limited and targeted operation, it seems that it has already had quite significant consequences in both directions.
Of course, it started as precise and targeted, but now the Israeli forces are saying they are in heavy fighting. They are asking people not to use their cars. So apparently this is not going to stop as a precise and limited operation. We can see that Hezbollah is firing missiles into northern Israel, and we can see other parties are joining their forces like the Houthis in Yemen, and we can see that also the Lebanese army also announced that they are redeploying in the area. So there is big military activities in southern Lebanon at the moment.
We're just looking at a live shot, Mohamed, of the Israel-Lebanon border. Just in one part of the screen you can see smoke rising. Seems to be quite what we're also hearing, we are now seeing going on in that southern part of Lebanon and northern part of Israel. Mohamed, you mentioned there these attacks from the Houthis in Yemen. That would be because they are Iran-backed, effectively allies of Hezbollah, part of this axis of resistance we've heard described.
Of course, the stance of the Houthis is the same stance of Hezbollah from the beginning of the war in Gaza, that they would support the militants in Gaza against Israel. So what all brought this to Lebanon and to the southern Lebanon is the insistence of Hezbollah to still shelling northern Israel to support the militant in Gaza. Also, the Houthis vowed not to allow any ship to sail in the Red Sea that is heading to Israel. They said they targeted Eilat, they targeted some ships also.
And that's the Red Sea resort, Israel's Red Sea resort of Eilat.
Of course.
Yep.
And the port as well.
Yep.
So that's why this shelling is continued. The Houthis are continuing. Hezbollah is continuing, and also we saw a few days ago some attacks from what's so-called the Islamic resistance in Iraq against Israel. So all of these forces that are so-called the axis of resistance are trying so much to do their best to force Israel to reach a ceasefire in Gaza and to do an exchange deal, hostages with prisoners, so the situation in the region would be calm. So the main focal of fighting is in Gaza.
Mohamed, we're going to leave it there. I know you're going to stay with us. We're just going to move on to some other matters that are happening in the whole spectrum of this news, that Israel has launched a targeted and limited, it calls, ground offensive into southern Lebanon. Hezbollah says it has targeted Israeli troops in the Israeli border town of Metula. As Mohamed mentioned there, a rocket barrage was launched at just after 8 a.m. local time, according to a statement from the group, as well as artillery fire 25 minutes earlier. The IDF says a number of alerts were activated in the area, which detected around 5 launches. Israel Defense Forces have released a video in the past few hours. Now, this video appears to show Israeli troops preparing to cross into Lebanon. These pictures from the IDF itself show soldiers preparing equipment as that offensive against Hezbollah looms, which has taken place over the last few hours. Let's talk to Hesham Shawish from BBC Monitoring, which reports and analyses news from media around the world. Hesham, thank you for talking to us. I wonder how the ground incursion is being reported in Lebanon and beyond.
Good morning. So Lebanese media have so far denied any advances on the frontier, and they've reported that Israeli media reporting on an advance as false. They focused instead on Israeli strikes on Beirut and on the southern city of Sidon, which targeted a Palestinian militant leader. And they've also said that the country is waking up to a lot of uncertainty. In Hezbollah media, Hezbollah has indicated that it's monitoring troop gatherings along the border area, and it's reported that the Lebanese army has repositioned itself along several points south of the Litani River. So that's the area where Israel is seeking to establish a security buffer zone to push Hezbollah forces away from the frontier with Israel. And media in Lebanon have also been covering Hezbollah's strikes against northern Israeli positions. So there was a claim of responsibility for artillery shelling on the Shtula area that's very close to the border. But Hezbollah has been launching its operations at a much lower frequency than is usual. So one of the main stories this morning in Lebanese media was that strike on the Ain al-Hilwa refugee camp. It's a Palestinian refugee camp just outside Sidon. It's on the coast in the south, and that was being reported as an unprecedented strike.
And Hesham, how is the regional media reporting it more widely, and the response from Arab countries?
Sure. So pan-Arab media channels have been covering the developments widely. It's been leading with Israeli army statements on that ground incursion. And Al Jazeera TV has been providing extensive analysis from around the region and from Washington. One commentator told the channel that Hezbollah would fail to gain the upper hand if Iran didn't intervene at this stage. And then Saudi Arabia's Al Arabiya TV channel and the UAE's Sky News Arabia have also highlighted remarks made by the US Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, and the phone call with his Israeli counterpart, Yoav Gallant, in which he said that Israel had the full backing of the US.
And Hesham, I mean, you mentioned Hezbollah and the action we've seen from it so far in this particular phase of the war. What are the difficulties that it's facing currently?
Yeah, the group faces numerous difficulties. It's still reeling from the assassination of its leader, Hassan Nasrallah, and the killing of 20 or more of its commanders over the past 2 weeks. Its forces still need to regroup following that wave of attacks. And there's been a major breakdown in communication between all the operatives as a result of the explosion of communication devices 2 weeks ago. That dealt a major blow to the group, and there's been a wave of paranoia as a result of those attacks. So there are fears that other communication devices may have been compromised, and the group may be wanting to avoid using them. Morale obviously has been affected among Hezbollah ranks, given the major intelligence breaches that Hezbollah has faced, and the hierarchy of the group is still really unclear. There's no named successor, and the main priority at the moment for the group is security. Yesterday, Hezbollah's deputy leader, Sheikh Naim Qasim, said that the role the naming of a successor would be done as soon as possible, and that the group's the group's strikes against northern Israel would continue as long as the war in Gaza continues. But for Hezbollah really to have the edge, it would need overseas assistance, possibly from Iran, its sponsor, and the government there in Tehran has indicated that it's not willing to expand the conflict. It's trying to de-escalate the situation, and the foreign minister did say yesterday in Tehran that Iran would not be sending any troops to Lebanon.
Hisham, thank you very much. Hisham Shawish, who's joined us from Jordan, from BBC Monitoring. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's a line we can bring you, the latest that we're hearing from the Israel Defense Forces. Their Arabic spokesperson, Avishai Adrai, says Hezbollah is using the civilian population as a shield to launch attacks in southern Lebanon. Warning that violent clashes are taking place in southern Lebanon, he warns Lebanese civilians against using vehicles to travel south across the Litani River. Now, that river we hear so much about flows east to west around 20 miles north of the Israel-Lebanon border. But that statement from the Israel Defense Forces Arabic spokesperson saying Hezbollah's using the civilian population as a shield to launch attacks in the south, and they have said for people to stop using vehicles to travel south across the Litani River. There is the scene that we can show you live while I'm speaking that shows the Israel-Lebanon border right now. We have seen smoke rising at various points over the last hour or so. We will keep you up to date with everything that's going on in that region, around the world and across the UK. This is BBC News.
We empower those who act. Those who see the correlation between things above and things below the surface. Those who navigate risk by meeting every turn with a heightened awareness of what's possible. Constant assessment. Determine the best position. Catch the perfect wave. CNE Group, where risk meets opportunity.
서울의 소울을 더한다는 건 특별한 사랑을, 놀라운 영감을, 모두의 즐거움을 만난다는 것. Feel so good, Seoul, my soul.
The future is already here, and it's a pretty impressive sight.
May the best driver win.
Now look, this is a pretty big deal. The latest developments from the world of tech.
A flipping burger robot.
Click on BBC News.
You're watching BBC News with me, Karin Giannone. Our special coverage of the situation in southern Lebanon as Israel says its troops have entered Lebanon for what it calls a limited and targeted ground operation against Hezbollah. Let's go over to Yolande Nell, who's in Jerusalem. Also waiting to talk to us is Hugo Bashega in the Lebanese capital, Beirut. Yolande, first to you, if you will. Just to give us a sense of what Israel is saying is happening as a result of this decision to go in.
I mean, perhaps aware of all the international misgivings about possible mission creep, the Israeli military statements that we've got really emphasize that this is what they call a limited, targeted, localized operation by ground forces. There's footage that's been released showing what we're told is the exit briefing of soldiers as they prepare to head into southern Lebanon. And this includes this group, paratroopers, elite commandos, soldiers who've basically taken part in some of the most intense fighting that has gone on during the Gaza war. Now, Israel has said that it's going to continue to strike against Hezbollah until it's safe for residents of its border towns in the north to go back to their homes. There are about 60,000 people who've been displaced by nearly a year now of cross-border fighting that has gone on in parallel to the war in Gaza. And it's been well known for a long time that Hezbollah does have close to the border underground tunnels, which Israel worries it could use to launch a 7th of October style attack, the same as we saw last year in southern Israel, led by Hamas. We know that there are bunkers there, there's infrastructure. Israel is saying that it plans to destroy that. That latest warning coming through, telling citizens of southern Lebanon once again to leave. Now, I should say, on the Israeli side, while there's been a lot of support for action against Hezbollah, people are very well aware that this is a dangerous new phase in the fighting. Israel's feeling emboldened. It believes it has had a lot of military successes against Hezbollah in the last couple of weeks, has greatly diminished its capabilities, but there could well be, seasoned Hezbollah fighters waiting for its troops on the other side of the border, and they know that terrain.
Yolande, thank you for the moment. Please stay with us. Let's talk to Hugo in Beirut. Hugo, just give us a sense of what impact the announcement, the action of the last few hours is having where you are already.
Well, Karin, I think in the last few days there was the sense that this ground operation by the Israeli military was almost inevitable. The signs coming from Israeli authorities indicated that this campaign against Hezbollah wasn't going to stop with the killing of the Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah. So I think the feeling here in Lebanon is that we could be seeing the beginning of a wider Israeli offensive against Hezbollah. As Yolande was saying, the Israeli authorities, the Israeli military is describing what is happening now as a targeted, limited operation in southern Lebanon. We still don't know the extent of this incursion. We don't have a clear picture of what's happening there. But again, this is an area of Lebanon where Hezbollah fighters operate. Hezbollah, its main fighting unit has thousands of really experienced fighters, battle-hardened fighters, and Hezbollah has vowed to resist any Israeli invasion. Yesterday we heard from the group's number 2, Naim Qassem, who gave a defiant speech saying the fighters were ready to confront any Israeli aggression. Hezbollah has been weakened after this campaign by the Israeli military of intense airstrikes and also targeted assassinations, killing high-profile members of the group. The entire leadership of Hezbollah has almost, has been decimated by these airstrikes. But we still don't know whether the group has the capacity to organize, to coordinate a significant response. They have been weakened, but they haven't been defeated. It's believed that they still have sophisticated weapons, including missiles that can strike deep inside Israel. So obviously the fear here, again, that this could be the beginning of a wider campaign, and the country is already under pressure from what's happening on the ground, with an estimated 1 million displaced residents. And again, the authorities are warning that hospitals are under pressure because of the sheer number of casualties from these Israeli airstrikes. So a very difficult situation for Lebanon right now.
And Yolande, as Hugo was saying, I suppose this is the moment when Israel finds out the true impact of what the last couple of weeks has had on Hezbollah, because until now it was a mixture of intelligence and speculation to a certain extent, just how much of Hezbollah's infrastructure has been left, given the attacks of recent days.
Yes, although there was, interestingly, a short statement where we had one senior Israeli military figure admitting that there had been what he called low signature raids going into southern Lebanon already. That confirms what we'd been hearing in reports from the US media as well. I should say we're under a lot of restrictions, not much information coming through to us about exactly what is going on the ground. But I think, through the coming days, a much clearer picture will emerge about exactly how much resistance Israel is coming up with, how long this operation will take. I mean, there is here a long and painful history for both sides. Israel has invaded southern Lebanon before, and if you go back to 1982, when Israel carried out a ground operation in Lebanon, that went on for to lead to an occupation that lasted for 18 years. People here on both sides very well aware of all of this.
And Hugo, I just wonder, as well as what we're hearing about the action by Israel, about Hezbollah, the Lebanese army itself, the suggestion from the Lebanese government that the Lebanese military will now go in to try to push Hezbollah north of the Litani River, that key line from east to west, if you like. How much of a role is it playing in that military picture?
Yeah, it's always been a very difficult situation for the Lebanese army because Hezbollah is often described as a state within the state. It is financed, armed by Iran, and it is described as having a militia that is much more powerful than the Lebanese army. And what the authorities are saying is that, a solution for this conflict is the resolution that was approved in 2006, the resolution 1701 that ended the war between Israel and Hezbollah. And this resolution would see Hezbollah fighters being pushed away from the border, above the Litani River, which is 30 kilometers from the border. It's never been fully implemented. That's been one of the points that Israel has made over the years. On this side, Lebanese authorities as well accusing Israel of breaching some points of this resolution. So the Lebanese government is saying that the Lebanese army is ready to work to implement this resolution, to push fighters away from the border with Israel. I mean, it's very difficult to see how and why Israel is going to agree with any kind of deal now, because it feels this campaign against Hezbollah so far has been extremely successful.
Hugo, thank you very much. Hugo Bashega in Beirut, Yolande Nell in Jerusalem. Many thanks to you both. And Lebanon's Prime Minister, caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati, has said that Lebanon is facing one of the most dangerous stages in its history.
Hello there. Let's take a brief look now at the weather forecast for Europe as we head through the coming days. And we'll begin with the pressure chart. So high pressure retreating northwards and eastwards, but still keeping much of Scandinavia largely dry. Various low pressure systems around as well, including across the UK, northern Spain and France, and also across southeast Europe. That's been bringing very strong winds and heavy rain to the area. It's just pulling away from Romania as we head through Tuesday and out towards the Black Sea too. So it's turned cooler across Turkey, Bulgaria, Romania now, Albania and into Greece and Italy. So temperatures below the seasonal average for much of central and western areas of Europe, but still above in Iberia. Now we'll see some wet and windy weather towards the north coast of Spain, pushing across much of France and Switzerland. Some wet weather too across parts of Germany, where again it's really quite cool for the time of year. Into Wednesday then, and all of these systems have pushed further eastwards, so there'll be some heavy rain across northern Spain again, pushing down towards southeastern France, and this rain is also going to be affecting northern Italy, where we'll see some windy conditions, some heavy rainfall within the area. Here's the city outlook for the rest of the week out towards the west. As you can see, temperatures starting to rise a little in Dublin and in Copenhagen, and this is the situation further east. So it's now turned a lot cooler, temperatures still dropping in Bucharest. Bye-bye.
With this ring, I promise to love you and make you smile every single day. Beneath it all, anywhere feel like home.
In the city where the sky's the limit and impossible is a myth, where landmarks stand tall and proud, it's time to aim higher. Let's honor our founders, our visionary guides, and scale new heights with each stride. Imagine a structure, a beacon of light, a global icon where luxury reigns and dreams take flight. A place where possibilities ignite. This architectural marvel tells a story of boundless potential. It's a destination of wonder, pushing boundaries and reaching new heights. More than just a building, it's a celebration of human ingenuity, a global sensation, a home to luxury in a city of dreams, where progress forever gleams. Burj Azizi, amazing on every level.
Hello and welcome to Focus on Africa, the place where real-time, in-depth and relatable stories matter. With me, Wahiga Mwaura, coming to you from Nairobi, where we unfold your discussions.
I always want to keep it original by being me.
News.
Macron announced that the French forces will leave by the end of the year.
And conversations.
It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen in my life.
That bring you to the heart of the continent. Focus on Africa from BBC News.
For breaking news live as it happens, follow BBC News in the BBC app. Save the stories you want to get your news your way. From live news and sport updates to global headlines. Stay up to date with the news that matters. Follow BBC News in the BBC app.
Live from London, this is BBC News. I'm Karin Giannone. Welcome to special coverage of events in the Middle East. We continue the coverage of the situation as Israel's military says it is engaged in intense fighting with Hezbollah after its troops crossed the border into southern Lebanon overnight. The Israel Defense Forces launched what they called a limited, localized and targeted ground operation against Hezbollah. This map shows the border with southern Lebanon marked in red. Meanwhile, Hezbollah said it was targeting Israeli troops with artillery fire at the border town of Metula. The IDF has declared Metula a closed military area, meaning all entry is prohibited. Let's just show you the live scene at the border between Israel and southern Lebanon. We've seen plumes of smoke rising for several hours now. Let's turn away from that and talk to Rula Amin, who is a senior UNHCR spokesperson for the Middle East and North Africa region, based in Amman, the Jordanian capital. Rula Amin, and welcome to you. Thank you for waiting to talk to us. I imagine every day that you don't see a ceasefire in this conflict, it means the humanitarian challenges for you get even greater.
That is exactly the point. With every day this conflict continues, the suffering and the losses among the civilian population in Lebanon is increasing and is exceeding what the humanitarian agencies are trying to do on the ground to meet these increasing needs. We have more or almost 1 million people who were forced to flee their homes in Lebanon, according to the government. These people, most of them have had to flee in the past week. They have been moving from one place to another as Israel's bombings have targeted and expanded the areas it is targeting. So people are, every morning they're looking, where is a safe spot they can run to in order to protect themselves and their children. Of course, they flee their homes carrying nothing, and they need everything: shelter, water, food, mattresses, blankets. And most of all, of course, they need protection. Now, UNHCR is on the ground providing mattresses, blankets, cash assistance, but it's really not enough. The government has established more than 700 makeshift shelters, almost 800, and yet it's not enough to absorb and accommodate all these people who have fled. Many of them are sleeping in the open air. They're sleeping along the Corniche in Beirut. They're sleeping in streets that they think are unsafe, but they still can't go somewhere else. And with the news of this latest escalation this morning, this is for sure going to push more people, and it will force more people to flee, looking for safety. But as I said, safety in Lebanon has become such a rare commodity. People don't know where to run to. And now we are seeing more and more Lebanese and Syrians heading to the border with Syria and crossing that border. It's good to remember, it's just one point for our audience. You know, Lebanon hosts a huge number of refugees, the largest number of refugees per capita actually in the world. There is at least 1.5 million Syrian refugees. There are Palestinian refugees, Iraqi refugees. And these people came to Lebanon running away, looking for safety, and now they feel and they find themselves on the run again. So they are reliving this, and they have fewer choices on where to go and where to be protected and how to be protected.
Rula, I mean, I wonder, when you hear Israel describing its operation as limited and targeted, does that give you any hope that this may not last too much longer, or does it do precisely the opposite?
Well, it's not about us. It's about the civilian population who is not taking, it seems to be finding this as an indication of further escalation, which means more people are going to be on the run, and they are already on the run. You know, so far, according to Syrian border officials, more than 150,000 people have crossed the border into Syria. Most of them, 60%, are Syrians. These are Syrian refugees who fled Syria in the past years to find safety in Lebanon. Now they run away from the bombings in Lebanon to go back to Syria. 40% are Lebanese. Most of them come exhausted, traumatized. They need health care. They need food. They need water. My colleagues are on the ground on the Syrian side of the border, trying to provide all these relief items. But it's not enough because people, most of them, they arrive to the border on foot. And even those who manage to get transportation, it takes them hours to flee. And beyond the border, they try to go back to villages and towns that had been battered by the war in Syria and the conflict. Most of them don't know if their homes are still standing, and they need humanitarian support even when after they cross the border. And another element is that we are seeing more Israeli bombings inside Syria. So even as they flee to Syria, the likelihood or the possibility that Syria will be entangled in this conflict become higher. And then they have to think again where to run to. In Lebanon, again, more than 1 million people forced to flee. And today, the humanitarian community inside Lebanon, together, they appealed for more than $400 million. They are appealing to the international community to provide this much needed support in order to meet the urgent need of this population. People are tired, they are exhausted, they are beaten, and they need urgent help. And the most thing we need is a stop and end to this war so that people can go back to their lives and we can stop the loss in lives among the civilian population.
Rula Amin, thank you very much, a senior UNHCR spokesperson for the Middle East and North Africa based in Jordan. Thank you for your time. You're watching continuing coverage of the breaking news of the last few hours that Israel has announced an incursion, an operation into southern Lebanon with ground troops. It's described the operation as limited and targeted ground raids on Hezbollah, and you're currently looking at the scene from the Israel-Lebanon border, which has seen plumes of smoke rising over the last few hours. Let's get an update on what's going on militarily and the picture that we're seeing in the early hours of this ground invasion. With me is Mohamed Taha from BBC Arabic. You're monitoring all sorts of sources. Mohamed, just bring us up to date of what we think is happening.
Of course, it looks like that heavy clashes that the Israeli forces are talking about is the artillery exchange between the two parties and the exchange of shelling. As we saw in the pictures, there are evidences of shelling of lots of Lebanese villages on the borders, and also Hezbollah is saying that they are shelling Tisfaoun and Safad and as you said, Al-Mutalla and Avivim. They target these places with lots of shelling and missiles at the moment. We do not have evidence that this heavy fighting is kind of engagement on the ground between the Israeli tanks and the Hezbollah fighters on the ground. So we can say that this heavy fighting is manifested in shelling from both sides. We do not know to how extent the Israeli forces managed to do a real incursion inside the Lebanese borders. It looks like that the Israeli army is not really interested to go into a battle that they might lose it in this critical time. They tried to do this limited incursion in Eid al-Sha'b. Eid al-Sha'b has a history with the Israeli army when in 2006 fighters from Hezbollah managed to go into Israel and to kidnap 2 soldiers and kill them, and they didn't manage to get them back until they did a political deal. So we do not have evidence that there is a massive incursion inside southern Lebanon at the moment. And as we can see that Hezbollah has got massive amount of ammunitions and fighters in southern Lebanon, and the point is to what extent they are going to utilize their capabilities in this fighting while they faced the last blows that they faced.
Mohamed, thank you very much. Mohamed Taha from BBC Arabic for the moment. Do stay with us. We'll be back for more developments. And let's hear from Brigadier